And he also talks about the different kinds of stereotypes that West has made are developed about the East. For example, he says that this Orient is timeless, which means it's not going to change. If you want to see how human beings were 2000, 3000 years ago, if any Western wants to know how people lived 4000 years ago, they should go to the East and they'll come to know, because East has not changed. Another stereotype about which he talks is that Orientalism makes assumptions about the people. Now, assumption about the people, they would define the people. For example, about the people of the East, there is a very common assumption among us, the West, that the Arabs are violent. For example, the Indians are lazy. For example, the Africans are sexually possessed or obsessed people. Or for example, the Chinese are inscrutable. Now, these are some of the assumptions that this West would made about the East. Now, all these are fantastic imaginations. All these are the development of the West's fantasy about the East. And these assumptions would liberalize these East, and there would be no individual identity. All the Indians are lazy. Fine. All the Africans are obsessed with sexuality. All the Chinese are inscrutable. All the Arabs are violent. So the individual aspect of the East is over, is gone. That is how the West develops the stereotypes about the East. He says that Orientalism also makes assumptions about gender. This is another stereotype. For example, West would always say that the men of the East lacks masculinity. Fine. And the women of the East is sexually, exotic. So they develop a division wherein they say that the female of the East is never sexually satisfied, because the men in the East is weak, lacks masculinity, lacks the sexual power. So that is another fantasy that West created. There is another stereotype about which EdwardSaid talks in his book, and that is that Orient is feminine, which means East is feminine, which means East is weak. Now, if East is weak, feminine can easily be ruled, so West can easily rule East. And this idea that the West is feminine was very well developed and established by some selected choice of words or selected choice of discourse, phrases, sentences, which Western writers would often write about the East. For example, they would write, Western, when describing the Orient is, they would write, is penetrated by the traveler whose passions it arouses. It is possessed, ravished, embraced, and ultimately domesticated by the muscular colonizer. Now, the choice of words, penetrated, obsessed, ravished, aroused, are the words which they chose to write about the East while talking about the colonization of the West, colonization by the West of the East. Now, that is all about Orientalism by EdwardSaid. Now, what we get, the basic idea from the book is that West, in order to rule the East, created a binary division, and that binary division was based on the Orient and Occident, or self and other, wherein West reiterated the fact or reiterated the assumption that East was weak, was vulgar, was lazy, was underdeveloped, was a Caliban, was cannibal. He used all sorts of negative adjectives about East and used all sorts of positive adjectives about the West, and helped the West to maintain its supremacy and legitimated that supremacy by first creating a fantastic image or symbol of East, and then institutionalized the East, and then made this assumption literary, and then continued to legitimate it, and then established some stereotypes, and those stereotypes made a good enough space in the literary writings of the West, and which would eventually be accepted as the facts by the East. That is all we have today at World of Literature. I hope that this lecture was helpful for you. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to share, like and subscribe, comment on the World of Literature. Thank you for watching, and keep watching the World of Literature for more interesting stuff.